Hi, I'm George Rivera. I'm from the Pueblo of Pojoaque and Santa Fe. I grew up both on the Pueblo land and in the city of Santa Fe. I started here at Santa Fe High and then went to college at the Institute of American Indian Arts. And then I went to California College of Arts. And then I studied for a while in the south of France. And I became an artist. And I came back to the Pueblo of Pojoaque to get involved with developing a cultural center for the tribe and revitalizing the arts. And the work that I was doing led me into the arena of having to raise money for the projects that I wanted to get done. So then I got involved in the business part of the government and eventually was elected when I was 27. I was the lieutenant governor of the Pueblo of Pojoaque and did 12 years there. And then I went on to be the governor for 10 years on top of that. So I did 22 years straight. My whole goal was just to, like I said, revitalize the culture, but then also what that took was creating and stimulating an economy that didn't really exist. So there was lots of infrastructure to be built. I was able to really benefit the tribe so that people would have the resources to go to college, have employment, provide housing, and insurance, and just different benefits that are necessary. My uncle Jake was the governor when I returned from Europe in 1987, and I had this vision to do a cultural center and bring the arts and culture back. And his response to me was, we don't have the resources to do that, but if you want to develop it, you're going to have to learn how to be not just an artist, which I already had trained for, but to be a businessman and a politician. And he asked me to join his government, him as governor, and help lead the tribe in that direction. And so we developed all the economic development that you see out there in Pojoaque now, all the way from the small grocery store, convenience stores, gas station, apartments, to the largest resort and one of the finest resorts in the state. That was all part of our development. And really it was his vision, and mine was the cultural side, but I had to get involved with the business side in order to make it all work. I'm really glad to see the community turned around, because when I started with the Pueblo, there was a lot of poverty, and there was a lot of substance abuse and addictions and social problems, and really no way to cure that. Those that had a fighting chance were those that left the Pueblo, because if you stayed there, the jobs weren't there. And so by creating an economy and jobs, when I first started, there was less than 100 jobs, and when I left, we were at 1,600 jobs. So the tribe's just over 500 tribal members, so all of them were employed. All that could and wanted to work were employed. And we gave them the opportunity to become educated. And so one of the programs that I developed was a scholarship program. So all the way from kindergarten through the PhD level, the tribe would pay for all your education wherever you wanted to go. My art interest started at Santa Fe High School with Phil Karshus as my art teacher. He's still one of my best friends, and it was something that became a passion of mine once I started playing with clay and throwing on the wheel. I just didn't want to do anything else, and so then I was on to the Institute of American Indian Arts and California College of Arts and Lacoste School of Arts in the south of France. I have a lot of favorite pieces. Each time I make a sculpture, I try to get the most out of it and challenge myself and bring out the life, in the composition. I did one of my son who passed away. It's up on Museum Hill, and he's doing the hoop dance, and that's a real special piece for me. It's life size, and when he was dancing, I used to photograph and video him all the time, and little did I know that he was gonna end up getting injured and passed away. But I used those photos and those videos to recreate an image of him, and it came out great. And it's an inspiration for young kids to just go out there and live life 100%, learn what they can, and follow their dreams. He said he wanted to dance, and before he knew it, we were taking him around the world dancing. And he represented his pueblo and Santa Fe. He danced for the USS Santa Fe submarine in Honolulu, Hawaii, when he was 6 years old. It wasn't just making a sculpture of him because he was my son. It was a pretty incredible little kid as to what he was willing to do and just go out there and be brave and dance away. Also did a sculpture here. The city of Santa Fe has it. It's Leroy Petrie. He's Medal of Honor recipient. That's 9 feet tall in front of City Hall. And he got injured in Afghanistan, and he lost his hand. And so when I had Leroy come model at my house for the sculpture, I just watched his mannerisms and everything that he was doing, and come to realize that this soldier was really just a welcoming person to everybody that he met. He took the time to sign what they wanted signed and have a conversation with them. And so I put him in the pose of reaching out his prosthetic hand to shake everybody's hand. So if you come to the city, you can walk up to the sculpture and shake his hand. And of course it's made of stainless steel and bronze, so nobody's going to hurt it. Then I recently did a piece for the Pojoaque Pueblo and city of Santa Fe. It's 2 Pueblo revolt runners, Katua and Umtua, that were killed in 1680 on August 9th. And it sparked the Pueblo revolt, which happened the next day after those 2 running messengers were killed. So that's really a piece that has a lot of history to it, and takes kind of a really difficult time in history between the Spanish and the Pueblos, and I think what City Hall was doing was saying, well, we want to acknowledge not necessarily that it was a bad thing that happened, but that we've all healed from that. And so I was fortunate when Pojoaque Pueblo asked me to make that piece for them. And then I do other works for other tribes too. And so like the piece I'm doing for the Los Angeles Rams Stadium is for the Pechanga tribe of Southern California. They sponsor the Rams, and as a result of that, they're allowed to put in this sculpture of their culture. So I'm doing 2 shinny players, very athletic looking, very detailed, and it'll go at one of the entrances there in the new SoFi Stadium. Very small part of it. I'm humbled to be a Native American that other tribes feel like they could come to, and I give them a great product in terms of the sculpture. I call them sculptural icons. Yeah, it's always an honor, and it's really humbling when, like I did another piece for the Pechanga tribe. It's 13 figures over life size of a traditional game that they play. And when I installed it, it would just, they were so moved by it, and that's really the biggest benefit, not necessarily the payment, but that you have helped these people retain their history and their culture through a piece that they can see every day. It's just, I'm a lucky guy to be able to do stuff like that. On the sculptural thing, I talk about here on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, I have a 12-foot buffalo dancer in front of the Smithsonian Indian Museum, which is there at the front when you're at the front door of the Smithsonian. That's where your stability comes from, your foundation. A building without a foundation is, easy to fall. And so if you can grow up with a foundation and your traditions, then it keeps you attached to the land, attached to your ancestors and allows you to be a more holistic person. That's why I went through what I went through, is because I felt like that was the path to take, the traditional path. I'm like both traditional and modern. You know, I've traveled the world. I, you know, do all the modern things, but dance and sing back at my tribe, and pushed projects like the Cultural Center for Teaching Arts, built a museum. When I built the Buffalo Thunder Resort, I had the whole theme be based around our architecture and our art and our culture. And so, yes, I went out and did my research in the modern world in New York, Vegas, LA, Hawaii, where all the big resorts were, and came back to the drawing board and said, our theme is us. As far as like the traditional stuff, I got a lot of the programs that existed and were very low attendance. I was able to raise that up by making it exciting to learn. Started classes in Tewa language and making the headdresses and making the moccasins and the whole thing, you know, from start to finish, what the tradition was about. And so by getting that going in the community, it encouraged a lot of the youth to come out and participate in it. And you know, and then there's that whole like pride and competition thing, like, hey, I'm a really good dancer, and I'm really good at singing, or you know, those type of things. I think, you know, are just the natural human nature of keeping the culture going, but I try to make it exciting so that it was something that people wanted to do. It benefited Pojoaque a lot to learn from the other pueblos that were willing to teach and that wanted to see Pojoaque rise culturally. It was one of the most important things that I could have done in my life, was to focus on that at that time and just say, we need to establish ourselves culturally. Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see where the kids are at today. My kids grew up dancing Pueblo dances, and I didn't dance till I was 9 years old because there was no dances. My parents' generation had no dances until like 1973 is when we started dancing again. So there was a big gap there of the tradition being put on hold, and people were like, well, aren't you afraid to reestablish this because it's been gone so long? I'm like, well, but that's why we need to do it, because it's been gone so long and we're still here, and we need to pay attention to that. And it's who we are, and we need to make sure that we bring it back and hold on to it and pass it on to the future.